silence. So one of the triennial agenda and message that the council that is in charge of preventing suicide worldwide, this time around from the year 2024 to 2026, is about changing the narrative and breaking the silence that surrounds this particular conversation. So sit back, relax, take out your pens and notebooks because I believe you'll need them. So in about 2 minutes, we begin. Thank you. Again, thank you so much for joining us for this very fruitful and important discussion. Um, I'm seeing already my panelists are in. There is a video that we want to bring forth to you that is taking quite a bit of time. So if you can allow for 2 more minutes, we start at 15 minutes past. It would really be nice to do so. So again, sorry for keeping you waiting. In 2 minutes, we begin. For those joining us, thank you so much for taking your time off your very busy schedules to join this very important discussion. It's good our panelists are already in, and as our social media team and production director is still working through the labyrinth of technology, I believe we can just start off, and as soon as that particular video is ready, we will begin and go on with it to watch it. So again, let me introduce our panelists, beginning with Sidela Akech, who is an advocate of the High Court, who's going to bring us the legal perspective that surrounds this whole aspect of suicides, and how can we leverage our justice system to only prevent more of such cases, but also to raise awareness in a manner that also takes into account the emotional side of things that surrounds the subject matter. Again, we have hosted Nancy, and we thank you so much, ma'am, for always honoring our invite and being part of the panel, always discussing very, very complex issues, and you always do justice for being here with us, and we cannot be much more appreciative of your presence here and every time honoring our invite. Arunga, Sadeb Arunga is a medical practitioner as well as a mental health advocate who, by the time we were perhaps parting ways, was the chair of Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, University of Nairobi chapter. Thank you so much, sir, for honoring our invites. And lastly, the man who needs no introduction, Byron Adera, who is the chair of BA Challenge as well as the CEO. So to start us off, Sadeb Arunga, last time when we were here with we were having the webinar discussion last week about the element of belonging to a community, belonging to a tribe. You painted a very grim picture about people you represent and people who ran to you to seek for assistance or help surrounding the issues of mental health. What are your initial thoughts of this particular discussion? And as well as you can perhaps introduce yourself if I've left something out. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, health advocates. Happy to join you in this very timely discussion. You are all aware it is a World Suicide Prevention Day, and I'm happy to see a great number really keen on creating waves and impact around this particular issue. My good name is Arunga. I am a medical practitioner, clinician in Kenyatta Hospital. We handle mental health issues in partnership with Mathare National Teaching and Referral Hospital. And I can't wait to break down this issue. So far as silence is concerned, matters surrounding stigma and mental health. Just taking up from what Patrice has mentioned and matters community and how that really goes a long way to help us to claw back the numbers so far as suicide is concerned, is that when you're in a community, when many people are in a community, in a safe space, sometimes you're in a community and you're not really in a safe space to express yourself or to openly interact with your community so that they can meet you at your point of need. So when you're in a community, you're able to express yourself comprehensively. You're able to circumvent issues revolving around stigmatization. And we are all adept with stigma and what role, or rather what we call risk factors as medical practitioner so far as suicide is concerned. Suicide is a very complex yet preventable public health problem. And it's largely resulting from an interaction of psychological, social, biological, and environmental factors. Yeah, it is among the leading causes of death among young people in many countries, and Kenya is not so different. But you can see when you look at our development trajectory in matters healthcare, this has not really been mainstreamed as much. But with the current change in public policy and the new health insurance coming in, I know that we've really tried to push for provisions so far as mental health is concerned. As late as yesterday, we were in a technical working group in the Ministry of Health, and we are really trying to put together a comprehensive package for Kenyans. How can Kenyans really take mental health seriously and decision makers equally? We are looking at prevention of suicide as a very complex, but it is yet a feasible endeavor, though it is not easy, and it requires a coordinated multi-sectoral response of health, education, labor, among other sectors. I'm very happy that our panel is very diverse. We do have a legal practitioner and someone who's very adept around mental health issues, and I can't wait for us to dive into it as a community. Let us discuss openly around these issues and create a way forward. Thank you, Patrice. You can take it.
Thank you so much, Sade, for painting us the picture around the subject matter, and always it's an honor to have you. Miss Sidela, what are your initial thoughts about this topic?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Now I can't hear you. Are you muted still?
I guess yes. How about now?
You're clear.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So I'll start by addressing the very controversial section of the law that criminalizes attempted suicide. Sorry, let me just digress a bit. In class, we used to have a lecturer who used to make a joke on a light note that if any of you ever decides to commit suicide, you better go full way or else the arm of the law will catch up with you. And I think that's what most people usually tend to misunderstand. See, suicide is not a crime because you won't be alive anymore. But attempted suicide is the crime. Specifically, that is section 226 of the Penal Code. Now, essentially, that section was there to deter such kinds of acts and to ensure that whenever someone takes these kinds of measures, then there would be sort of an oversight on the part of the judiciary or judicial oversight to facilitate access to mental health services. However, I'm made to understand that that is not the case because the section in itself is more punitive and it might not give such individuals the help and attention that they deserve. Ideally, penalizing individuals can exacerbate feelings of guilt and hopelessness instead of giving them the support that they require by identifying it as a mental issue rather than a criminal act. Okay, so it also the penalties might not be effective in addressing the underlying causes of suicide attempts. That is, in my opinion, and we end up as a country focusing all of our attention on legal penalties other than diverting our attention towards effective mental health intervention. So assuming that I attempt to jump off a building today and I'm not successful and you take me you decide to find me or imprison me for a year or so, you have diverted a lot of the country's resources towards penalizing me. But then am I able to get the support that I require? Does the act in itself identify and acknowledge attempted suicide as a cry for help. In this case, I've seen is it in March this year? There was an attempt to repeal that section of the law, and I look forward to reform efforts that focus more on supportive, rehabilitative measures and improved healthcare rather than just criminal penalties on just that beaten aspect. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and we will be perhaps eager to listen more from the legal perspective. But before we go towards that direction, let me bring in Miss Nancy. Your initial thoughts.
Thank you so much. For me, I think I like the fact that we are encouraging the normalization of having these conversations. And even at the beginning of this discussion, I would like us to do a warning, because I
just a moment, Nancy. You're really speaking as if you were in a very below the water. Please come up. Come up.
Is that clear?
Excellent.
Thank you very much, and I'm really sorry for that. I was saying I appreciate that we are getting to a point where we are normalizing this conversation, or trying to normalize the conversations around mental health in general, and particularly the topic that we are covering today. And I would also want to say, for the sake of the people who are joining this conversation, and without assumption, we throw a trigger warning that should we mention or say or give examples that reminds you of situations or events or circumstances that you're struggling with, please bear with us, because the intention is not to put a lot of distress on you, but in a way we want to have this conversation and be able to enlighten. In the event that happens and you feel like you can't stay, it's okay to drop off. But also, I will ask the panelists that we be aware there are people, when we are speaking, sometimes this can be a trigger. And the reason I'm happy that we are normalizing is because, as we say, let's change the narrative and encourage conversation. On Sunday, I was having a conversation with a few friends I was sitting with, and someone asked me, this encouraging conversation, if we keep talking about suicide, aren't we going to start giving ideas to people's mind about the same thing? It was like, wait a minute, saying conversation, we are not saying, let's have a discussion about how to die. It's a discussion of what are the struggles that we are feeling? How do we even get here? What are the perceptions that we need to transform so that we start understanding how people get to those particular stages in life? How do we promote openness? Because sometimes people are fearful, but let me just keep it to myself, because the moment I open, somebody is going to misunderstand where I'm coming from. So also it's good for us to be understanding. When we say let's have this conversation, we are not giving ideas. We're just saying this is a reality and this is how we need to go about it. And with that, then we have clarity of mind, and then we move together. We then build a culture that is going to give support. And then we shift now from this silence where we say, oops, what did just happen? How come that person wasn't talking? But he didn't look like, all that. So because now we need to move from that being very silent to advocacy. And I have heard that from the speakers who have preceded me. That way we are going to empower the community and individuals around us so that we're able to navigate this together. Back to you, Patrice.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Always short and sharp and direct to the point. We will be very eager to also listen more from your end. And now it's my singular duty to bring Byron Adera, who, if you followed him closely, is a mental health advocate, but as well as a person who's gone really down with the aspects of mental health issues and has come up very, very strong and impressive, and is using his platform to encourage people to not only share more by aspect of offering safe spaces, but also he encourages and accommodates especially people from the veteran side of things who have heavily affected with mental health issues. So perhaps we hear more from Byron Adera, and you can take it on, giving us your initial thoughts and perhaps your expectations for this discussion.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Patrice. Totally appreciated. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this very important, all-important subject. I come hot in the heels of very able panelists, led by Daktari here, Dave, Nancy Kihara, a seasoned psychologist, and we have our advocate as well, Sedela. I think this is a topic that couldn't have come at a better time, and as has been ably said by all the panelists, I take it on from Dave, who just last week, came right here on this webinar, having had suffered a loss, mate who took their own life. So the topic is actually home, even just from that example alone. Sedel has spoken to the very fact that our legal infrastructure is not attuned to the reality on the ground, that we are criminalizing a sickness. And as we posted very ably on the BA Challenge group, we don't react too well, especially when we approach the matters, mental illnesses of sorts, as much as we do in ordinary cases on normal sicknesses. So it's more like, of course, approaching someone who's suffering from malaria, as they said in the group, and blaming them for being exposed to the female anopheles mosquito. And of course, then then criminalizes the very fact that you're exposed to a sickness. We don't do that, particularly in mental illnesses. We act counterintuitive to what we ordinarily need to do. And sadly, even our penal code, our legal infrastructure is not adjusted well to deal with issues of mental illnesses and especially suicide. As Nancy has said, I do agree totally. The very fact that we are speaking about suicide doesn't mean that we're giving people ideas as to how to attempt crime. And we see this even now, if we have to digress a little bit, the matters sexification. Our parents fear to talk to us about, some of those things, fear that we've been exposed to. But lack of knowledge, people perish, as Hosea 4:6 says. God's people perish because of lack of knowledge. So I feel that this topic is really rich, and I know we'll have a bit more time to speak on diverse, the whole stretch of it, including the effects and what we go through when we are affected or in a way or another. But I would want to say that I really appreciate that we are speaking, because we're speaking with fine solutions. So I'll end it at that. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to speak, Patrice. Loved it.
Now, kickstarting this conversation, bringing in our very first panelist, who's Sadev. Perhaps now, you being in a community of people who are suffering so much from and heavily affected with mental health issues, can you please give us a brief overview of the mental health situation around the youth? And perhaps you can even speak more from your field. That we now know in this country, medical interns have gone ages without the big paid peanuts, and in other respects, you had to strike for more than 2 months for you to get the government attention. Now, as soon as last week, there's also a student from Kenyatta National Hospital, that is the school, the hospital that is attached to University of Nairobi, that helps students study through the whole regalia of being a medical practitioner. What is the mental health overview of the youth in your field and outside, perhaps even giving us a slight picture, paint us a very good picture about the 800 individuals who came to you seeking for help, especially when it's surrounding the aspects of mental health. Thank you.
Okay. In connection to what Patrice has mentioned, I want to intimate, or I want to say that he's largely clearly brought out the burden, the burden of this particular public health concern so far as it is concerned, and clearly also connected it to what we call risk factors. And risk factors could be in connection to your profession, could be in connection to either diseases that you are managing, could be in connection to social stressors regarding socioeconomic issues, disruption, and all these could really precipitate a suicide scenario. But to even go a step further, I would just like to bring out the numbers in terms of suicide being the fourth leading cause of mortality among 15 to 29 years old, according to the WHO. Right, so there's a very huge burden, and globally, 700,000 persons are estimated to die by suicide every year, and large portion of that number is cornered or is largely located in low and middle income countries. So when we're talking about risk factors that lead to such kind of numbers, we're talking in Kenya, Kenya's age standardized suicide rate to be 11 in 100,000. In every 100,000 people, we'll get 11 people committing suicide. So we do know at the Ministry of Health, under the Directorate of Mental Health, we've really made significant effort trying to just put together data around suicide cases and those who are even exposed to suicide as it is. I know the data could be scanty outside there, but there is data, and we would like to approach our management from that angle, where we can be able to bring in control those risk factors, as well as reduce the suicide mortality. Kenya is a signatory to the United Nations, and mental health falls squarely in one of the Sustainable Development Goals, so far as good health and well-being is concerned. And that policy puts us squarely in a position where we need at the Ministry of Health, we are trying to reduce suicide, this prevalence of suicide by 10%, and we are working annually by 2025 or 2026 to get that number reduced by 10%, in line with the Global Mental Health Action Plan that has been running from 2013 and is designed to run all the way to 2030. Maybe before I can just go a bit deeper into what might be risk factors, as Patrice has mentioned. I'd just like to try and define what suicide could be. Suicide is a spectrum of self-destructive behavior, ranging from temporary wishes of one's death to completed suicide. And one could be exposed to this through either psychiatric disorders or what is colloquially known as mental health disorders. And this could have different severities. And that's why also suicide cannot be viewed in isolation. It cannot be a subject matter handled in isolation. It has to be addressed in connection to all these issues. If it's coming from health, if it's coming from socioeconomic issues, professional issues, job issues, unemployment issues, that these are issues that predispose a lot of people to what we call depression. And depression is a type of mental illness that is largely associated with suicidal behavior. And stigma comes squarely in because somebody easily gets depressed when they're stigmatized and they're not able to express themselves. And even when they do, they don't feel like they're part of the community, or they don't really feel like they fit in. They don't really feel like they fit in, and that stigmatizes the individuals, and that predisposes them to depression, which at the tail end ends up with them taking their own life. Like one of the panelists has directly mentioned, has directly indicated that you might see someone, okay, they from the outside looking in, they look like they're okay, they look like they're composed, but it's because they're not able to express themselves, and they're probably stigmatized in silence. But we come to pick up that case at the very tail end when somebody has already completed suicide, and looking back retrospectively, you get to notice that actually not all was well. So that is something I'd like to bring out. And in conclusion, I would like to talk about community and relationships and how those could be a risk factor in terms of suicide. We're talking about disasters, wars, conflict, discrimination, trauma, abuse, sense of isolation, like I've mentioned, lack of social support, relationship conflict, discord or loss. And we could also have individual factors playing a big role as a risk factor leading towards suicide. Whether you have family history of suicide, whether you have any genetic or biological factors, whether you're having any individual hopelessness, job or financial losses, substance induced suicide is also a major factor, mental disorders, and previous suicide attempt, as well as barriers to accessing healthcare, access to means of suicide. The WHO, or rather globally among medical practitioners, it is known that the prevalent means of committing suicide is use of pesticides, or rather such like chemicals. And having easier access to this kind of means really predisposes someone to suicide. We've mentioned issues around being sensitive as we discuss this issue, and that leads to my conclusion around issues of inappropriate media reporting and social media handling. How do we handle this issue? Any nuance in terms of our approach could either effectively reduce or do have the opposite impact and increase the levels of suicide, leaning towards stigmatization and associated help-seeking behavior.
Thank you so much, Sadev. You've painted a very grim picture, but it is well painted because we are dealing with a reality that is now well thought out, and we now know the intricate aspects of this particular subject matter called suicide that perhaps we can overlook in other quarters, but come to bear when the act is done. Before I bring in Nancy, and you will speak to a lot of things from the aspects of, the suicide being the fourth leading cause of death globally, to the accessibility of substances that help aid this particular vice. But just before we get into that, we have a video that Nancy had requested us to play. It only takes 2 minutes, so let's have a listen, and then perhaps afterwards, Nancy will take it on from there. Thank you. Sound, please. Production, sound.
Why don't you just stop fighting? Stop pretending. And I try to push it away, but it gets louder and louder until it's all I can hear. You're not enough. Why do you even bother? No one sees, no one cares. Sometimes I almost believe it. Almost. But there's this other part of me, a whisper, softer. It's almost hidden. It says, hold on, just hold on a little longer. There's more to this. There's more to you than this pain. And I start to remember the things that matter. the sun on my face, the sound of laughter, the way the world looks after it rains, people who love me. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know if this fight will get any easier, but maybe, just maybe, if I keep listening to the quieter voice, the one that tells me I'm worth it, maybe I can make it through one more day, just one more day. And maybe that's enough for now.
Thank you so much, production, for that. And Nancy, now you can take it on from there and give us perhaps the essence of that video and break it down and break down again the mental health perspective of the subject matter at hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrice. Again, that's just a video to depict what happens to someone who is going through hardships and how they are processing the pains that cannot be seen, but they can only be experienced by themselves. And these conversations, you will always have these tagging sides of you. One that is really showing you how hopeless, worthless, you're not good enough. In fact, nobody will even feel your pain if you're gone. Some words that sometimes we even throw to people when they verbalize that I'm just feeling like I would rather not be in this world. And some people are like, so you think if you die, someone is going to miss you, without them realizing maybe, just maybe, that was a call for help. They would have done something then and not blame them for having done what later they would call a cowardly act. So as we address the issue of conversations around suicide and with the statistics that we are given, it means that if with 700 people dying every year, then it means in every 4 seconds there's someone dying. That's a very huge number. If you look at the youths, 15 to 29-year-old, being the fourth, and actually sometimes they even rank as the second leading cause of death among that particular generation, it's because of the things and the factors that have been stated there. But then, what is it that can be done? And you know, sometimes it's also good to look at these perceptions and what do they even mean. For example, if someone is seen to be unaliving themselves, they are seen as a moral failing person, weak and selfish. And selfish comes where someone says, how come that person couldn't have thought about their family or their children or their spouse or their parents or someone like that? So that is seen as selfish. Why wouldn't they just think of that? But that video reminds you that sometimes there's a time they have the brighter side that reminds them, but there's a lot, there is full of life. I want to wake up every morning and smell the soil when it rains. Because, I mean, I'm human and I'm thinking and I'm able to process those feelings at this point. Then tomorrow, the darkness sets in. The same person who wants to have optimism, positivity, is the same person who has to fight all these, for lack of a better word, and quote unquote ghosts that come, visiting them when they least expect them. And they also have to keep balancing that. And these are things that can only be seen to them. In fact, some voices will even tell them, so why are you even bothering to fight? Why can't you choose the easier option? So, but if we allow people not to see them as moral failures because of this particular, especially if someone is going through depression and they setting into worthlessness, hopelessness, isolation, chances are they will be contemplating on how to end it all. So let us have a new narrative where we recognize this public health concern, that we resort with the psychological pain. In my practice, I always tell clients that it's the most, there's a mystery here where when you have psychological pain, I have no antidote. There is no antidote for psychological pain. And like when you come with the physical pain, we can say we can do from morphine to Panadol. It depends with the range of the pain that you're experiencing at one point in time. But when you're going through psychological pain, you have to have the harness, to have the resilience, to have the tools on how to be able to manage that. We are going through traumas that sometimes we don't speak about because we will be judged. Yeah, we have some mental health, with some health disorders that we are thinking we can't talk about. Some are very personal. And that is why sometimes you feel like you're a reject, you don't fit, you're a social misfit. But if we were able to be compassionate with others, sometimes listen to hear or hear what people are saying, because sometimes you can talk to people who are not even hearing you. And maybe that is when they would be able to pick what it is that you're going through. If we get from conversation, where sometimes also talking about suicide, people feel fearful, like you're saying it because you might do it. And sometimes you're not even actualizing it. It's just an ideation sometimes. So we can encourage those honest conversations and promoting openness, especially the young people, because of the disillusionment when it comes to transitions or different stages of their life, and they realize things are not unfolding as they had anticipated, and the disillusionment that comes with the whole social media facade. It's good also to equip, to be prepared that life does not always serve us on a silver platter. None of us have had that unless you're privileged. That we have sometimes to fight through life. We get to be resilient to be able to move to the next level. It's doable and it can happen. But again, let's not motivationally speak to people who are struggling. Let's be very practical. Just listen. For something, it helps to listen. Don't go you know, telling someone about how bad that one is, or giving them examples. As if it were me, it is not a you story. It is their experience. Listen and try to your empathy to be able to respond to them at their level. Not don't stand that conversation to yourself. That is what we are calling being empathetic and helping them to be able to open to that dialogue. Because the moment someone takes your story and makes it theirs, you have lost that person and they realize you're not even listening to them. And sometimes we do this because it's uncomfortable and we are thinking we're encouraging them, but in them they will never come back to you. And don't go reporting them to every other person. As much as we say, like, for example, in therapy, the only reason I may not keep your the only person, the reason I'll promise you I'll not have confidentiality is if you are a threat to yourself and others. And that is in the suicide, because we need to keep you alive. So sometimes you have to sign contracts, we call it a suicide contract, to promise that you will keep yourself alive for a moment until we are able to deal with what are the underlying issues and how are you able to get the tools to deal with them, and how do we change the thinking patterns that probably are also causing you to do that. Are the risk factors avoidable? Are they removable from your environment? Or do you need to move from the environment without endangering you or making it more difficult for you even to transition to the next thing? And then there's the issue about the policy and advocacy. I really I appreciate that we are well represented from persons who are working within that level. We have very beautiful policies and frameworks, but sometimes our implementation is where sometimes we get a bit of a challenge. And if we could just get that right and keep on doing and funding it, the way we should, mental health funding the way it should be done, this is a fight that we will be able to overcome this crisis during our intervention, improve on our suicide prevention programs and mental health services that we're offering across board. And for the lawmakers, in those, consider mental health in broader policies, so that some of the things that are affecting still within the 15 to 29-year-old, sometimes is because of the expectations that we are coming into. We are told we go through schooling and we'll get jobs and we'll buy our first cars. We marry our Prince Charming and then we travel the world. There's nothing like that. It's a good wish list, but we also need to know we have to work hard to get there. But as we do that, is the environment that we're being given even giving us the space to do all those things? Are the legal frameworks thinking about how it is affecting the persons within whom we're supposed to? Because if you look at economic situations, the business environment, are we actually is it for us? Is it about us who are getting into that space? So when it comes now to the legal part of it, those are the policies they need to challenge when sometimes things are imposed and they're not appropriate or not good for that particular, for the community at large, I would rather say that. So I think with that, with the recognition of the myths and facts, like People who talk about suicide are seeking attention, you know? And I say that could be the only time you'll ever be in a position to be able to respond appropriately and offer support. That most suicide can happen without warning. You know, where you say, no, how come we didn't see it coming? You know, it just happened. Always there will always, either that person was struggling with something, either they were even isolating, depending with whatever, if they were struggling because of economic situation or an illness or violence at home, there has to be something underlying there. Check and see how those people are doing over time. And once someone decides to die by suicide, that nothing can stop them, that's another myth that is very common. But the fact is, it is preventable. With timely prevention and support, we can save a lot of lives. Thank you, and back to you, Patrice.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Words of wisdom were never uttered. We've seen various aspects from, the aspect of listening, the aspect of being practical with these people who are suffering from these suicidal thoughts. Again, we should not be motivational, but rather pragmatic, listening more than talking, and being empathetic with an individual who is passing along or going through this particular challenge. And before we get back to the video, because there's certain parts of the video that we did not quite get well, especially from the introductory part, as we are waiting to bring in Sidela, because it's also very important for the legal community to paint for us a clearer picture of where the laws and policies are as at now, what are the areas we can improve on, and what can we do better in terms of effectuating or more or less enacting these particular policies in a manner that takes care of these particular people who we've already recognized as sick. As Bernadette had already put it more succinctly, you would not jail somebody for having malaria because he was bitten with an anopheles mosquito. What you do is that you properly diagnose this particular person and go ahead to offer requisite medication. But just before we get into that, production, perhaps we can get the first 1 minute of the video, then we proceed on to Sidela to also tell us what are the areas we think we can improve on, and what are the support system, the kind of support the judicial system can offer to these people who are suffering from this. Production.
It's always there. This little voice in my head, whispering, nudging. It knows exactly when to come. It creeps in when the nights are too long and the silence is too heavy. When everything feels like it's too much. It says, you're tired, aren't you? Why don't you just rest? Stop fighting. Stop pretending. And I tried to push it away, but it gets louder and louder until it's all I can hear. You're not enough. Why do you even bother? No one sees, no one cares. Sometimes I almost believe it. Almost. But there's this other part of me, a whisper, softer, almost hidden. It says, hold on, just hold on a little longer. There's more to this. There's more to you than this pain. And I start to remember the things that matter. The sun on my face, the sound of laughter, the way the world looks after it rains, people who love me. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know if this fight will get any easier, but maybe, just maybe, if I keep listening to the quieter voice, the one that tells me I'm worth it, maybe I can make it through one more day, just one more day. And maybe that's enough for now.
Thank you so much, production, for playing it now even more clearer and giving our audience, the opportunity to interact with that particular material. And Sidela, before you come in to answer the concerns I raised just before the video is played, there's also the element that Sir Dave had already highlighted: accessibility to this particular, pesticides. We call it pesticide, call it these particular devices that aid these suicidal individuals to carry on with the objective of, taking away their own lives. Is there a way legally this can be prevented, or does the Act also recognize a very salient feature of the whole value chain around suicide, and how does the law take care of that?
Hello. So, just on the topic of suicide, the law talks about it. Of course, we have the Mental Health Act in Kenya, but then the Mental Health Act conflicts with, when it comes to attempted suicide, with the penal code that I was talking about. And I tend to think that in terms of the judiciary, it can play a crucial role in supporting individuals who attempt suicide by shifting its approach from a more punitive measure to a rehabilitative and supportive strategy. So instead of treating suicide attempts as criminal acts, the judiciary can offer a support system that prioritizes mental health care, social reintegration, and also the aspect of human dignity. Because in my opinion, if a person is charged with attempted suicide, their files can be accessed by, we don't have that aspect of human dignity to those kind of people. Your matter will be mentioned in court just like any other matter. So it doesn't offer the whole aspect of privacy and human dignity. So I believe some of the ways that it can support individuals who attempt suicide is, first of all, we need to decriminalize, and we need to introduce legislative reforms where we are moving away from criminalization. And now we are saying, instead of having criminal penalties which are counterproductive for individuals, we are saying let's focus on rehabilitating persons who attempt suicide, because in taking them to prisons or fines isn't, in my opinion, the best course of action that we can take as a country. Also, I believe the judiciary, in collaboration with lawmakers, can push for change in the law that prioritizes mental health intervention. I like to talk about the fact that sometimes we need to remove the law from our boardrooms to the ground. So if you are in a position to effectuate these changes, because sometimes we tend to think that the law is made in parliament, but if you have that access, that platform, then you need to utilize that platform, such as the one created by the BA, to ensure that we can talk about legislative advocacy, So the reforms could be coupled with increased investments in mental health infrastructure and services. We can also talk about the issue of court-mandated mental health care. We have court-mandated mediation. Why not have court-mandated mental health care? Because instead of now imposing these criminal penalties, maybe the courts can mandate individuals who attempt suicide to undergo psychological evaluation and counseling. The courts can require attendance to therapeutic programs designated to address underlying mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, or even trauma. I also believe in individual care plans. So the judiciary and the court system ought to work closely with mental health professionals to develop some sort of individualized treatment plan for persons who attempt suicide, addressing those specific needs and ensuring that they receive the proper care and support that they deserve. Okay, we also need to do judicial training and sensitization. I'm glad that I've learned a lot from the previous speakers. I did not know about what Nancy call it as suicide. Sorry, I don't give it. There's a contract that patients sign. I like that because it sort of gives them that they end up feeling the obligation that I have to, in case they're in those situations, then they always feel like they can always reach out to therapists to talk when these thoughts sort of creep in. Also, we can have sensitization and training on the topic. It would also help the judiciary know how to handle it better, because I tend to believe we didn't grow up with this sensitization, because once in a while we'll hear our friends talk about it on a light note, and you see, we usually have this African approach of telling them, useme kitu kama hiyo, don't say that. And immediately, or we shush them, we become very harsh and we think, well, that's the end of the topic, of the problem. So we also need to have a trauma-informed approach. We can adopt a trauma-informed approach to legal proceedings, ensuring that individuals who attempt suicide are treated with empathy and with dignity, while minimizing re-traumatization through the legal system, where now they have to go through parading and their cases are being called in court, amongst other cases, and I'm paraded there in front of everyone else and my charges are read. I believe that is a form of re-traumatizing rather victims, because now we're treating them as criminals. The other disadvantage of the system in Kenya is we have a very adversarial system. So maybe we need to introduce, when it comes to this topic, a non-adversarial proceedings in court that are designed to minimize stress and anxiety. Adopt a more compassionate, non-adversarial approach, by focusing on support, like I previously stated, and rehabilitation. So we just remove the whole aspect of fining and imprisonment, and also referral networks. I believe the judicial system needs to do better in terms of having a referral network to mental health services, support, social support programs, and community-based organizations that can provide additional resources and care for such individuals. So I believe there are some of the measures, in my opinion, that when we're talking about this topic in the legal spaces, we can try to create, I like to call it legislative advocacy towards this particular topic. A friend of mine also talked about, once we're having a conversation, the integration of social workers and mental health professionals. We need to integrate them into the system so that the survivors of suicide attempts can be able to access these social workers very easily, and maybe all in all have a better process, as opposed to the counterproductive process, the punitive one, where we're saying you'll be imprisoned and we will fine you. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much, Fidela, for giving us from the legal perspective side of things, or how we view this particular scourge and how we can better our justice system to deal with this particular scourge. But it would also be interesting, perhaps, if you would be so kind enough to illuminate the question I asked earlier. Is there some framework around limiting accessibility to these particular tools that help aid suicide? Is it embedded in the law? Is it a niche and a lacuna we should look at? Is it embedded in the law that such tools are kept away from the people, or it's not there and we should look at it?
Okay, so what I can do when it comes to access to information, well, it's a constitutional right. So, and it can only be limited pursuant to the sections of the Constitution. I think that is Article 24. So the government cannot limit your access to information. The only thing we can do is maybe request that sensitization be done on that topic, but we cannot as a country say that we are going to limit access to certain information because we believe that it harms the society in general, because there's a higher measure when it comes to limiting that right, that access to information that everybody has in Kenya. Maybe we can try sensitization, but limiting a right, a constitutional right, might be that one might be a bit problematic. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Bringing in Bernadera, and my main question that goes to you. You are a pioneer ex-special forces soldier. You are an embodiment of somebody, a mental health hero, because you went down with it and you came out of it stronger and even better, and you do even more by encouraging, people to the better side of things. You can live to see better days, and you've seen people. How do people get to a point of suicide, and what can be done from a leadership perspective, from a brother's perspective? As a soldier, can come to you that, man, I'm going down. How do people get there, and how can we help such individuals get back up even better, to help other people as champions to, fight for their own causes? Before we open up now this discussion to, the audience to also give us their thoughts, their views, as well as their questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Patrice, for that question. Very well grounded on practical scenarios that actually happen. So from let's say a soldier's perspective, because you narrowed it down to that, I feel fairly much a lot of what goes on within that part of the world is what you'd expect. What you see is what you get, as they say. So people are macho men, alpha males, so alpha females, and the very stigmatization that actually also happens out here happens there, though in a way that would be very subtle, but in a way that also the way the makeup of the organization itself encourages that to actually happen, and in very profound ways. So you're expecting people who ideally need to portray that very hard, hard feeling. That's one, but of course the hard exterior that people are invincible. So invincibility, of the sense, in a sense that creates in a being or in a person that overall feeling of, if I portray myself as a weaker element within this outfit, then ideally I'm not playing my part, or ideally I'm not actually just being the fit guy to be in this kind of organization. So in a way, that in and of itself, reduces anybody's capacity to exercise what, of course, the mental mechanism promoted them the way I had, now the mental engineers, Nancy Kihara and Dave here, vulnerability. So they say out here, and which is encouraged, and which of course very profoundly helped me at a personal level, that you got to actually start to appreciate that in strength is weakness, and in weakness there's strength. So we are not men of strength. Strong men, but to appreciate that we men of strength in a way that is appreciating that we can also be weak when we are strong is a very profound revelation that can only strike you at the most needed point in your life, especially when you're going through mental illnesses or so. So to buttress the point, you have this organization that everybody is a macho man, everybody is a macho woman. So already even just the makeup of that organization itself discourages people to come out and stick their hands up in the air and say, I could be going through something. Oh, I'm feeling weak now, or rather, I'm not okay. And as Nancy and Hail say, it's okay not to be okay. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that in and of itself, as I said, the makeup of the organization and what's expected of an individual discourages honest and open conversations around, what is perceived to be weaker perspectives, what is perceived to be, if you're going through something, sometimes there are things beyond your control. Because ideally, when your mind shifts, when your mental psyches, are impacted by things that are outside the environment that you cannot control, most of these mental illnesses or mental challenges are things that you cannot control. And sometimes when you go, most times when you're going through them, we are actually very unconscious of what happens to us. So it needs to actually take someone else to point it out and say, something could be going wrong with Byron. What do we do to lift them out of that hole? But ideally, with the makeup of the organization itself, that discourages, or you're seen from the prism or the perspectives of, oh, he's an outlier. If he's going through that and he's actually talking about it, he's not one of us. So that in itself, again, discourages any interventions from without, for people who would feel, I'm a brother's keeper, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to understand what they're going through, I'm going to be empathetic enough, like Nancy says, that you're going to drop your shoes, wear theirs, and walk a mile in them. Without doing that, we are not actively listening. Without doing that, we are not empathetic enough to approach them at their point of need. Not from our perspectives and not from where we feel things and not from where we actually just going to go like pat them in the back and say, you're doing well, you're going to be okay. Nancy says that may not be enough. What could be enough is someone being honest about it. And it's not speaking motivationally to us, but already in our organization or in the setup where you have the organizations that are built to actually make people or find people from a point of elevated strength and elevated macho-ness, so to speak, then that in itself is curtailed. Now, how do we, because you asked, how did I get through that? And I say I've spoken about this on national TV and other international platforms. I didn't face up to this kind of help. And it was very interesting when I spoke to a medical dog who's been out there and a responder who's been across the globe doing all these things. It's a household name. The guy who's behind the scripting for the Real Households of Kangwale. And he basically speaks about this, so it's open source. And he practically also tells of never having had to visit, speak to someone who's going through. But the interventions, especially that which are coming from the people power, so investing in the people power, the people around you, the community around you, are very vital. So, like in my journey, it took a mother who was compassionate enough, who was empathetic enough to lay a hand on my shoulders and say, you are not the son of your daughter. And so that was me setting myself, being set on the path to recovery, because it struck me really strongly, like a thunderbolt, that there was something absolutely wrong. So it took a lot of introspection, listening to myself, getting that community on board, and that's a long story short, why the BA is here. Because I've understood quite strongly that to be able to get to a point where you can be on the path to recovery, you need a community. And a lot of these things, and just speaking about our staff, out there, is helping not only other people to cope and to be better, but it's also helping us or ourselves. So when you're going through stuff and you're able to tell it out, you get it out of your heart. You're finding, therapy. You're finding restitution. You're finding recovery. You're finding that beautiful community, that tribe that are able to walk the journey with you together. So I feel that is something that we should practically encourage. It's something that we should emulate, especially when we hear of others out there. Nancy's been strong in this field, and she's spoken in different fora. Others have been invited to, which is pretty much just storytelling for mental wellness, for hope, healing, harmony, among other things. So yes, it would be nice to encourage us all on this platform. Being a brother's keeper does not just mean that you pat them on the back and tell them to be okay. It means that you gotta go beyond just the saying, drop your shoes, wear theirs, walk a mile in it, and be able, in a way to start to understand what they're feeling, and so be in a better position to be of meaningful help, even if it was just to provide that little ear and being pathetic enough while at it. Thank you so much.
Yes, very well put, Daradera. And perhaps before we are now welcoming comments and suggestions from the audience, and perhaps if you have something that is really burning deep inside of you and you wish you would say it out aloud, please kindly you can raise up your hand using the feature that is just below the Google Meet, and the hand feature that is below the Google Meet, and I will be able to pick you out. It's first come first serve basis, so let's get it all in. Let's get to interact more. Let us also get to hear more from you, not us projecting our thoughts to you, but you also saying it out aloud as a way of marking this World Suicide Prevention Day. Sade.
Allow me to pick it up from where Byron has left, also in connection to what Wakili was speaking to, and that relates to how do we have this conversation? How do you approach someone to have conversations around suicide, right? Because many people feel like maybe talking to a friend or a family member about suicidal thoughts and feelings could be extremely difficult for anyone, or maybe someone feels actually even if they talk about it, they might actually give them ideas. But I'd just like to debunk that myth that actually speaking about this openly, and the best way could even, though many people are unsure, the best way to even do it is to just directly come out and ask the person, right? You can't make a you can't make a person suicidal by showing that you care about them, right? In fact, it will do the opposite, because you'll be giving that particular individual an opportunity to express their feelings, and this could provide a lot of relief from any loneliness or depression they might be experiencing, and even flash out any pent up negative feelings that could be precipitating some degree of depression in a particular individual. And this may largely help that individual prevent suicide by just giving them a platform to, you know, authentically speak about whatever is bedeviling them, and all you need to do is listen, and listen intentionally, listen with empathy, without necessarily having to bring out that a mental toughness state that maybe Byron has alluded to, where you need to man up, you need to fit into a particular scenario. So and that directly helps us to puncture the stigmatization that is really a big obstacle so far as dealing with this. So you could start a conversation very simply. You could just ask them, I have been feeling concerned about you lately, right? And then you open up the conversation continuously. You could say, recently I've noticed some differences in you and wondered, how are you doing, right? And lead on the conversation from there. I wanted to check in with you because you haven't seen yourself lately. Is there, right? And then you can continue. You can continue the conversations from there. So these are just statements to help you know how to break the ice so far as this conversation is concerned. When did you begin feeling like this, right? How can I best support you right now? Have you thought about getting help? Did something happen to make you start feeling this way? So those are just open statements that could make someone a bit comfortable enough to just let them engage you and create a safe space for them, so far as how to have this conversation is concerned. Legally speaking, as Wakili was talking, in our technical working group with the Ministry of Health, we are working, and also to Patrice's concern about pesticides as a very largely abused or misused means of suicide, completed suicide. We are opening channels of communication with the Ministry of Agriculture. We want to come up with a pesticide control policy, just the way we control some pharmaceuticals or medications such that we have some things that have to be, so some medications are over the counter, but some have to be prescription medication, so that we control the these chemicals, the access, how easy do people access these chemicals, and what predisposes them to misuse. We are also looking forward to repeal the section 226 of the Penal Code, which criminalizes suicide. We're looking to repeal section 226 to decriminalize suicide, because we can't be punishing illness, so that people are actually safe to come out and have this kind of conversations. Yeah, thank you. Maybe the audience could give their perspectives.
Yeah, that's very, very. That's very much so elaborate. You put it very clearly. And as I told the audience earlier, we have now opened the discussion. We have about 10 minutes to go. So it will also be so, refreshing to hear from the audience their experiences about this particular topic, and what are their initial thoughts about this particular topic. It will also be interesting to know how you people in the task force you're working with, Dave, how you will try to limit certain of these pesticides like rat and rat. It's very accessible. Anybody who wants to, kill a rat, he or she has to go and purchase one. It will be very interesting how you work around the complexity of the issues at hand. No hand is up. Are people shy about this topic? As you said, it's an open discussion. This is a safe space. Nobody's gonna judge you for anything, and you can put up your point across in whichever language, perhaps, that you want to put it across, for as long as it's national. So, any reaction? I saw Sir Kiarie in the building. Councillor Kiarie, last time we were having a webinar last week, you were very heavy on trying to rehabilitate people who are huge on substance abuse, and you ran us through the whole process and the intricacies that surround the subject matter. It's also important to note that majority of these people who are abusing substances might also be leading towards this particular scourge. Perhaps if you would shed some light around that particular area and field of expertise, and how you people have been able to deal with such cases. Somebody is heavy on substance abuse, but also very heavy on these suicidal thoughts. How do you go about and work around that, Sakiari?
Okay, thank you, Patrice, and enjoyed listening to you people on this heavy topic of suicidal matters. And in our field, one of the causes or one of the factors that lead to suicide attempts and also suicide ideations has been said that is substance abuse. So we receive people who usually come into us to our center and tell us that they have attempted suicide in the past. They have also had the suicidal ideations, and it was due to what we call hopelessness and also the pain that comes now with substance abuse, because substance abuse is just a mask of inner pain and also hopelessness. So these things happen and we witness them. So what we do is that we bring out the intervention. It can be medical intervention, and also we bring in therapy and also crisis intervention. Because sometimes, like in our center, we have had in the recent past around, let's say 3 years, in a margin of 3 years, we have had 3 cases whereby we have witnessed people trying to commit suicide in the center. Yeah, and it's just a serious case that should be handled with care. So for us, we just try to bring in hopefulness, because hopelessness is the thing that contributes more to the suicidal thoughts. So we bring in hopefulness or hopeful thoughts, and also we try to end the pain, maybe through therapy, talking about these issues, and doing counseling around the events, or circumnavigating the events of that caused the ideation. And this way, this person now emerges a winner and sees the meaning of life. So we do come across these challenges, but we cope. Patrice, I hope I was clear, Patrice.
Yes, you are very clear, Mr. Kiari. Very beautifully put, as you've had, trying to link the two, substance abuse and the aspect of suicide. You're doing a very good job, sir. Keep it up, and I hope that the Lord that gives us strength shall always be with you. Any more reaction? We've opened it up, and if there are no any more reaction to this particular topic, I would just bring up the panelists for their closing remarks about this topic. We recognize how sensitive the topic is. Perhaps not very many people would want to put out their voices into this. Important to note, if you have struggling with this particular scourge and suicidal thoughts, we can link you up in the BA Challenge community. We are a community of professionals who are coming up to light a candle where the one is waning, and we have a team of professionals, qualified professionals, including counselors, psychiatrists, and psychologists as well. You can reach out to us, and we will be able to link you up with great minds like Nancy Kihara, who is also our panelist here this evening, Councillor Kiarie, and Adele Mayenza, who is also out of this country, but she also goes a long way to help and light quite a bit of light where one is waning. So, as we are closing up, Nancy Kiara, your final thoughts.
Oh, sorry. I was really talking. Thank you very much. I think this was really insightful. I've also been able to learn quite. So for me, I'll still carry on with the same thoughts. First is to say, as looking at the annual World Happiness Report, in Kenya, we of the countries that were in the interview, we ranked number 114 out of the 143 countries. And then we were ranked number 29th as the most unhappiest nation in the world. Now, why am I giving that statistic? It's to tell us that we already having circumstances within our spaces that would predispose us to the strains that would have our give us psychological stress. And we need to identify early enough that even as we speak about suicide, is about how do we harness our coping skills and problem-solving abilities, because these problems are here with us, they're present with us. How do we even impart this in our own children, our own brothers, siblings, so that we are able to overcome, deal, and even walk through, because this is where we are in the country we are in. Because by developing coping skills and problem-solving abilities, yes, that will help in decreasing the likelihood of feeling suicidal and hopeless. Again, this is also very personal to people. It is important that even with all the policies in place, legal framework, availability of therapy, even with all that, where is you as a person? Because it is collaborative. It takes you and I and the other person. Because even if we put the policies in place and you have not put the personal effort to achieve some things, it will be a bit difficult. So especially connectedness. Do not live in isolation. Try to find people who you can connect and relate with, so that even when you're going through difficult circumstances, somebody you can have someone who is your safe space. So those people we call confidants, and choose carefully who your confidant is. It's always good also to belong to a certain community, so that when things are tough, at least instead of running to substances, these are the people sometimes you think they are going to be your first support system.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I've seen there is a hand that is up. Bernard, perhaps you can let up that particular burning issue. We were just winding up. Thank you.
Oh, hi everyone. I hope you're well. My name is Bernard Oyosi Sadi Benito. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, though you're in a noisy background, perhaps if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
would,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, but
Uh,
proceed
I
on.
w- yeah, yeah. I'm sorry for that. Where I live, there are no power, so I'm a bit outside. So back then in 2020, I also had a situation where people call camouflage films. Nasemanga mbona niende kuambia mtu mwingine mashinda zangu. So I like currently how the issues are being raised. Maana ulikuwa naambia mwanaume ni kujikaza, kufa kimwanaume ukae na mashida zako. But nowadays at least people can speak. But there also one thing I also came to realize your confidence should be someone who's older than you, someone who's wiser. Because I came to realize when I was having an issue when I was dating someone who broke up, the confidence that I had, the guys who are my age, the rumors spread in the whole of the entire company where I was working because it was someone who was a colleague. And I faced a lot of discrimination, stress, and stuff. But I managed to pull through because after all that, I took it as a learning curve. I looked for someone who's older than me, like a mentor, someone who's older than me, who had seen it all. And I was able, and nowadays at least, I'm able to be alone because I came to realize at times your peers you might think that you can be a confidence, but some of them they don't mean you well. So also I'd like to add, I don't know if Byron has recorded this session because I came in late. I like to have a recording of the session so that I can go through it alone. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernard. Yeah, thank you so much, Bernard, for offering those, very kind and wise words. And yes, our production team is recording this particular session. It will be available on our YouTube channel immediately after this, or perhaps tomorrow. So we'll be so kind to share you a link. If you can just get in touch with us, if you're in the BA Challenge group, we will be able to send you this particular link. Sidena, your final thoughts.
So mine is just to concur with what Nancy has said, and just to add that let us remember that conversations about suicide goes beyond statistics and the policies that we talk about. It's about human lives and the struggles that we don't see, and what we can do is simply be there and be present. Okay, so every effort that we make to break that stigma, to reach out and to understand, can mean the difference between despair and recovery for someone in crisis. So let this webinar be a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a world where no one feels alone in their darkest moments or when those thoughts sort of creep in, and that together we should choose compassion, action, and hope. So those will be my parting shots.
Thank you so much, Sidela, and I hope you are able and you're in a position to represent some of the people. If somebody's charged with attempted suicide, I hope your number will be on so that you can get to, give them quite a bit of representation when they come to Milimani locals or wherever they could be. But thank you so much for creating time to join us in this particular conversation. And without much further ado, let me bring in. Sorry for that. Let me bring Byron Adera with his final remarks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Patrice, for yet another opportunity to speak to, after the very able panel led by the very great ladies, that's Adela, an advocate, then Nancy Kihara, our mentor, engineer, Dave Daktari. Well, from my end, it's just to thank you all for gracing this occasion. Always very helpful. When people speak like this and listen to each other, the world becomes easier to navigate. Nancy has spoken to it very ably about the connectedness, and a lady like them did say, and of course, I quoted her, so Margaret Whitley, that when we seek for connections, we restore this up to wholeness. Our seemingly separate lives become more meaningful when we realize how necessary to each other. So that basically just buttresses the whole idea about how much we can go through the business of life if we just came together. That a hill, in someone's perspective, an anthill could as well be a flat ground. Your Everest could as well be something that I tweak into figures of 8 every morning for warm up. And I'm really happy that the statistics are speaking back at us, and we see how crazy the world is becoming, especially on this other part of the world. That for Nancy to actually say the statistics having that we are the 29th and happiest nation on earth, perhaps the only statistics I seem to disagree with. I'm not very optimistic from that perspective. We think that we are getting a lot worse by the day, and because we are such an angry society, we are, in a cat race or a rat race, so to speak, and we seem to be very individualistic within this very collectivist society, and that is a very startling statistic, so to speak. But of course, an irrelevant one to add here now that most of the security experts. We've spoken to the very fact that Kenya is leading from behind, and for me, very interestingly, in other areas as well. In 2017, when World Internal Security and Police Index did rank us at the third worst country in the world in terms of our national police service. Was interesting. We beat Congo and I think Nigeria. But that aside, I'm really just trying to make us understand how important it is for us to come together and build a very strong tribe of people who live up to the spirit of being a brother's keeper. That when we speak and we sit together like this and we converse over things affecting us in the society or societal issues as such, then they become a lot easier for us to handle, if not to actually just cope and realistically find solutions that are enduring and are able to take us to the next level. Because that's where we want to go. That if we drop the ball as adults, the people who are able to sit down and take perspectives, even by sitting on both sides of the aisle, then we are possibly setting our children or our children's children up for worse in the society. I wouldn't want that to happen. So I really congratulate everybody that's pretty much put their best foot forward and made this webinar a success. And I want to just urge all of us to take the good news out there, and happily so that we're recording every bit of these activities that are happening on this platform to be taken out there to help a lot more humans live easier. With that, I hand it back to you, Patrice. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, and thanks everybody for listening.
And there, with Byron's remarks, we bring this webinar to a close. Thank you so much for taking your time out of this very busy busy world that we are in. As Byron has put it, is always a rat race. What's the next big thing? Thank you so much for taking your time to join us for this very important conversation. We normally have our webinars as part of our Wellness Wednesday segment. So be on the lookout for the next webinar, which will be around very, very, very serious and impactful conversation in the community, in this community and in this country we love called Kenya. Thank you, our panelists, beginning with Sir Dave. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us. We know medical practitioners are perhaps the most busy people in this country. Thank you so much for joining us. Nancy Kihara, thank you so much for joining us and even taking time to give us a presentation to play. You always are very impactful and full of wisdom when you are part of our panel. We thank you and we are humbled enough. Sidela Akech, thank you so much for joining us. I know advocates are equally busy. You are either in the courtrooms or perusing through a heap of files. So thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Baron Adera, our chairman and CEO, for joining us and also being part of this panelist. Your hand is up. Perhaps, is there something burning in you, sir? Baron. You are muted, sir.
Sorry. I was fidgeting with my laptop, and perhaps it went to a different. But thanks a lot for the opportunity. Let me just say hello to my classmates and prof here. Ray Kabi is here. Simon Dua, I think, just got an email at the tail end of things. Hopefully, we see them when we organize this fitness clinic for the weekend on Saturdays. We welcome everybody. It's free. Yes, and I think that's part of building mental resilience and holistic health. Thank you so much.
Yes, and from me, Patrick Agano, Head of Business Development at the BA Challenge. It was a pleasure hosting you guys, and we've hosted numbers. So be on the lookout on the next big webinar we're going to have, perhaps next week or the week afterwards. But let's keep the fire burning. Let's keep encouraging people to talk. As Sadev has already put in our chat box, the triennial theme is breaking that particular cycle, changing the narrative on suicide, and the call to action is start a conversation. Start the conversation. So let's begin starting this conversation. Check up on a brother, check up on a sister who's not doing well. Don't regret not checking up on them when it's too late. So the best time to plant a tree was 1,000,000 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So the best time to start this conversation is today, and let's save lives, because if the more, the merrier. So let's keep, lighting up a candle, lighting up a spirit somewhere, and God will bless us in every little effort we put to bring this scourge to a stop. So from me to you guys, thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bon appetit.